for all your. For over 260 episodes, Dwayne Brummett and Ali Alberigo have been sharing how to take your martial arts school to the next level. Welcome to another edition of SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Now here's your hosts, Dwayne and Ali.
Hello, Dwayne Brummett here with Ali Alberigo, SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Good morning, Ali.
Hey, Dwayne, how's it going? Good to see you.
Good. I figured I'd just begin with the end.
Yeah, on the other podcast I do, we play the outro after the intro with our sponsors. Anyway, so it was kind of cool, but I was watching it and I wasn't sure if it was live. It wasn't live, so we'll have to see how that ended up on the live broadcast.
Yeah, so, hey, we're into summer. Right into summer. How's things going? First off, I know we got a different topic today, but how's things going before we get into our topic?
Well, just to give you an update, the Lord Overseer of our state, Cuomo, we call him, he just said that we're allowed. And by the way, it's the most confusing. People are so confused, right? So it's like all restrictions are lifted except for people with blue eyes, who have red hair, who are 2 years old, between 2 and 72. Like it says, and no one knows what the heck's going on. So from what I gather, all of our restrictions have been lifted and we're back to business as usual. No social distancing, no masks, no this or that. The only questionable thing is if you're not vaccinated, then you do have to wear masks and you do have to social distance. So we're just going at business as normal. I made an announcement the other day, and by the way, people were like overjoyed when I mentioned that we're no longer wearing masks. Even a few parents said, well, now we'll sign up our little one. We didn't want them to wear masks, so we've been holding off. And then I had a few that were really concerned, like asking silly questions like, how's the setup? I'm like, you've been coming for a year and a half. You know the setup. Like nothing is, we didn't build a new room now that we're taking our masks off. So they're going to come in. One mom's coming in today to walk through the facility with me. I'm like, I don't get it, but anything you could do to ease their mind. So we're as of this Monday, we're going to take off the masks and go back to business as usual. Cross our fingers. Everything is okay.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And I'm curious, give me an update on, just like membership wise and stuff, how's that going with trials and memberships? Cause everybody talks about summer blues and why I don't know if you need to calculate that or look at your dashboard real quick and I can give up mine if you need time.
Yeah, no, I don't need any time. I watch those numbers. Like you and I are both numbers nerds, right? And I was terrible in school, dude. I really was I didn't like math. I didn't pay attention. But when it comes to the dojo, my numbers, my overhead, my expenses, et cetera, I'm so on it. So this morning I looked at my numbers and I have about 22 people in the sales funnel that are in 1 month trials. Those people probably won't convert until next month. So far this month, I've signed up 8 new members. We're at mid-month. So I'm hoping to get 10. I'd be happy with 10. I'm hoping for more, of course. We have every single person that I have on my roster has renewed all the way up until August. So I've done early renewals with all the people. So I have no quits whatsoever. So what that means is people are still coming, they're renewing, and they're staying. So my numbers each month are just going to ticker up, right? So If I sign up 10 this month and I sign up another 10 next month, that's 20 new members. That's another $1,700 to $2,000 in billing volume. So that's a good thing. I'm happy with growth like that.
Yeah, I've got 8 new members right now, so I'm right there with you. I actually have 11 new members, but the other 3 are family add-ons.
Okay.
And so they actually aren't there. I'm not making any money with them.
Right. I signed 10 this month.
I can hear that, right?
Yeah, I know. I hit it. I just clicked it and enlarged it, and it went on. So I immediately hit the mute.
No. But one of them is an add-on. It's a dad. We'll be doing it with the kids. So that's just reinforcement, right? And then I got a grandma. She's in charge of her kids, her grandkids, and she's doing it.
Wow. How old is she?
Oh my gosh. She is probably 63.
That's great, though. Not much older than I am, though.
So maybe 65. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
that's great.
I guess I could look it up. But then I've got another family add-on. I'm trying to think who it is. But anyways, so 8 actual paying people and 11 new students.
That's
But
outstanding.
you know as well as I do that those other 3, even though they're not monthly paying customers, there's retention that's going to happen because of them. There's retail that's going to happen because of them. There's event sales tickets that'll happen because of them.
You know, it's interesting. That's so funny that you mentioned that. And I think maybe we should do a future call, a show on that, because we've done it before a number of times. But student value is still a misunderstood concept, you know? So like when I'm helping people market, they don't understand. Like they're like, oh, I got to sign up and I'm going to make $50 a month. I go, but that's not all, you know, and you times that by 12, that's like, what is that? 1,800 a year. You know, I'm like, but it's not just 1,800. Now, if you add on, if you got every student to do $120 extra a year on top of their tuition times 100 students, that's another 12 grand a year if they bought sparring gear and you made a profit and a t-shirt and this and that. And that doesn't include people they refer. So like, what is an actual student value and how long did they stay on average? So that we should probably do a call on that alone, just so people understand the numbers.
Well, I was going to say, one is maybe in that call we do terminology so that we're all on the same page. What a lead is, what a prospect is, what a student value. Right. I mean, just all of those things. Maybe we define all of that and then talk about it. Just so, because if we don't define it, then we may not be talking. We could actually be talking about the same thing, but be totally off base and not understand each other. So, and I don't mean you and me. I mean us and the listeners.
Of course. And that is always a big thing, right? When people people hear certain industry buzzwords, one coach, consultant, podcaster might be talking about one thing while others are talking about another. We're talking about another just based on terminology.
Yep. Yeah. So why don't we, what do we have planned for next week?
Nothing. And that would be great. I just wrote it down. Call topic, student value, and terminology. I wrote it down. So, because you and I always say, hey, we should do it. And then we forget what we were going to say. So I wrote it down. And I'm not sure if we have a guest next week. Let me just quickly take a look. I don't know. Yeah, the 23rd is next week, right? So is that next week? Yeah. So that we do have a guest. And that's Lance Trippett from the Academy Kings. He's going to come back on with us and work on some sales processes and so on.
So then why don't we do it on the 30th?
Yeah, that'd be great. That's awesome. Okay, I'll put it down.
And then that next week we won't do a podcast. I'm going to be closed, the studio. So
what's that, July?
That week of the week of July 4th through the 10th.
Yeah, you're closed the whole week. That's insane. I was bragging about you the other day. And I had one of my clients, and they're a fledgling school. And I said, look, my friend Dwayne, he's got it down. And I said to them, and it's kind of cool too. I said, you have to become an architect, right, of your school. You gotta master how you want your building, and not just the physical building, but also but how you want everything to look within your school. And being that they're brand new, they're a new school growing, I said, you can architect your structure, everything exactly the way they want. And that's when I bragged about you. I said, listen, Dwayne's open, Monday through Thursday. He has Fridays. He does private lessons and seminars and things of that nature. Saturday and Sunday, every once in a while. But most of the time you're closed on the weekends, right?
Except for birthday parties on Saturdays.
Yeah. And then I said, you're also closed 6 weeks a year. Is it 6 or 8?
Oh gosh. I mean, you add it all in, it's probably close to 8. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said to them, and by the way, they're a new school. They finally, I've coached them and they've hit 60 members. They're doing really, really well. They've went from being, not making any money to be able to make $2,000 or $3,000 a month in profit. And this is all within the first 6 to 7 months that they're doing this. And I said, but you don't have to, the one owner is her and her husband run the school, and she's got 2 infant babies under 3. And she runs the school and teaches as well. And the husband also teaches. She teaches karate. He teaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I said, you don't have to do what everyone else does. Just because you see other schools are open Saturdays, open in the morning and the nighttime and day class and night class. I said, you got to choose what you want to do to be happy. And then you build your school around that mindset. And that's something that I think that they're going to do. And they took off the weekend and they were happy.
Yeah. See, so check this out. Yeah. Anything that's in black, let me make it a little bit bigger maybe, but anything that's in black is when we're closed.
Wow. Cool.
So President's Day, we run our studio. So you come Monday, Wednesday, you come Tuesday, Thursday, right? So if I close on a Monday, I'm also closed on a Tuesday. So President's Day and the day after. This one in March and April was spring break. My wife works for a school district, so I take the same week that she takes off. In May, what is that? That's Memorial Day, right? Yeah, so Memorial Day, we took off Monday the 31st, but then we're also closed June 1st. And then for the week of 4th of July, we're closed, as you can see there. And then September, what is that, Labor Day? Yeah, so we're closed that Monday and Tuesday. October, we're closed, that is Columbus Day, so we take Columbus Day and the day after. If Halloween falls, let's say Halloween was on a Monday, we would take Monday and Tuesday off. Right. So that when Halloween falls on a weekday, we get an extra time off. Yeah. And then November here, you can see just for Wednesday all the way through the weekend for Thanksgiving, and then we always take 2 weeks off in December.
Right. That's awesome. And by the way, just so people know, if you take off on a Monday, you also take off on a Tuesday, so that both people that are in those different classes experience the day off as well, right?
Yeah, nobody gets more than anybody else, and nobody gets less than anybody else.
That's a pretty cool concept too. So I basically, if I shut down on a Monday, I'll let everyone make it up the following week. It doesn't matter. If they don't have a class, they could come extra. But I think I'm closed similar to you. I close from, do Thanksgiving weekend. We do Halloween always because no one would show up. I mean, we do July 4th weekend, but not the week after. So I think we're closed about 3, maybe 4 weeks in total as well. But so that's pretty cool though. And that's what I was bragging about you. I'm like, you built this around the lifestyle that you want to live. I like, why would we build a business and make ourselves, like literally say, how can I make myself miserable? Let me write down how many days I have to work. I'm like, you should be thinking about how many days that legitimately you could take off. Don't be lazy. Don't just do it for the sake of, but people are not going to be mad if you close up on Thanksgiving. You know how many people I know that close Christmas Eve, open up, on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, they're open on, the rest of the days during Christmas holiday, then they close on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and they're back open again. Like they're afraid that their clients are going to be mad at them.
Well, look, I often get this, especially during the summer. I'll go, you know what, we're going to take some time off in the summer. And I go, well, why? Oh, we're going to go on vacation in July, and there's going to be some other small little ones. I go, well, when's your vacation in July? And kid you not, almost every time, not every time, but almost every time, their vacation is the same week that we're closed.
Right, because they schedule it around your schedule.
Well, they schedule around the holiday, which just happens to be our schedule too. Right. And so I go, look, that week we're already close, so you're not missing that week. I said, what others are you doing? Oh, well, we're going to take a day here, a day there. I said, that's not a problem. We'll just do private lessons to make that up. And they're like, oh, okay.
Now, you don't charge for privates on those days?
I don't charge for privates at all. They're all included into the program. I don't really have anybody that ever abuses them either. So,
right, that's awesome. So, well, this is a great topic on its own, right?
Well, it's a good intro.
We have some guests
on. I think designing what you want, for your studio, and what we're going to talk about is designing what you want for your studio, whether you want to rent or whether you want to own, right?
Right. That's true. And by the way, we do have a few people that showed up, and one of them is Ryan Blanchard. He's the owner of Cajun Martial Arts. And I didn't think of him as an owner that has his own real estate, but Ryan is a real estate mogul. Like, you know, I don't know if you would say a mogul until you're like in the hundreds of millions, but no, he has real estate properties, commercial and residential, that he rents, and he owns his own building that he bought and rebuilt and retrofitted around his school. So maybe next time we could have Ryan on. Ryan Blanchard, very successful school owner, good friend of mine for 20 years, I think, around. But so today we wanted to talk about that, and it's kind of interesting. Like,
well, if he's on, pop him that link to hop on if he wants.
Ryan, if you want to come on with us and do and pop in for a second, let me know here on the comments, and I'll send you a link behind the scenes, and you could pop on with us if you'd like. Let me know if you're still listening and you want to do that.
Yeah, and we can just take, 10, 15 minutes of his time before the top of the hour, right?
Yeah. And we do have someone coming in at 12, maybe, and potentially 12:15, 2 other guests. And we just left it kind of open. Pop in if you could make it, because they're busy school owners. And one was Chung Park. He has like this flagship 10,000 square foot school that's like literally like a country club, like, homework stations and koi ponds and all this. It's just amazing. And also Solomon Brenner, who not only has one school but has like half of the 20 something schools that he owns the real estate on. So he'll be on with us too. So anyway, long story short, so the question is, and I've owned my buildings. Did he respond?
Yeah, send him the link.
Okay, let me do that right now, Ryan. I'll send it to you right now, and let me find it. But so yeah, let's get him on.
You go ahead and send that. I'm just going to say something real quick. I know that I've talked to different school owners with regards to owning and not owning. I know you, Allie, you've owned and rented as well, and so I thought this would be a phenomenal topic, because selfishly, I have maybe an opportunity to buy a building and not rent anymore. I've rented for 23 years now, and I look at all that money and I think to myself, man, I could have actually owned something by now that would have been mine and had tenants, if that makes sense. So it'd be nice to kind of bounce this info or this idea off of people. And now I've known some other really, really successful school owners that go, I don't want to own at all.
Well, here's the thing, like, being that, and you and I have talked about this, like, I always, whenever someone asks me this question, I always tell them about my stages of philosophy, right? When I was younger, I wanted to take over the world and have 12 schools and own all my real estate. I always used to joke. Now I'm very careful, but I go, I wanted to be like Donald Trump, less the bad hair, right? Now, of course, you love Trump or hate him, so mentioning his word gets people triggered, right? But when I started, like, I wanted to buy all my buildings. And at one point, I think I was up to 15 pieces of real estate. 5 or 6 of them were commercial real estate. 2 of them I actually owned for my own schools. And that I was the owner in the corporation and the tenant at the same time. And it was great, because just recently, and it would have been this year was my 30th year in that one building. I just recently sold that building off at a really great profit, right? And it was just, timing was right. I'm at the age where I wanted to slow down and kind of be, less extended or exposed, or, and my mindset changed. So, there I go. I was once wanting to buy the world and own the world and run multiple schools. Now I'm 56. I've been doing this for 30 years. I want to kind of slow down a little. And so owning and not owning, there's positives and negatives to all of those things. Yep. So if you want to ask questions, and we've discussed that too, behind the scenes, you and I, about the pros and cons to both. And here's my good buddy, man. How are you, Ryan?
Good. How's everybody doing today?
Good to see you. By the way, Ryan owns Cajun Martial Arts. He's from Louisiana. Ryan, do you still own the shop, the lawnmower shop as well?
Yeah, I'm in my lawnmower fixing gear today.
Yeah, so he not only owns the school, he owned I think it's still I Love Kickboxing Academy, or maybe not, but you have a kickboxing school too, right? And then you also have the martial arts school and rental properties and your building that you own for the school, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We purchased the building for the martial arts school going on 4 years ago, and we had the opportunity I just made 20 years teaching in the community that I am right now. And so 2001 is when I started, and I'm literally a quarter mile from where I taught my first class in that community. Started my first
Wow.
school in '97. So it's when the opportunity came up to purchase this building, and actually brokered a deal where we owner financed the building, and so we didn't have to go to the bank. We didn't have to put down a down payment. We got with the owner, and made it worth their while, and they kind of helping us out too by not having to go to the bank. So that was pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
I think you and I, when we worked together, which we still do, but we were doing stuff weekly together, and you were starting to build up. You even had I don't know proper terminology, like not trailers, but like the rental units that were in the park. What do they call those?
Yeah, mobile homes. I own a
Mobile homes. Yeah.
a tract of land with 4 mobile homes on it. I actually had one burned down, but I had 5. One burned down about 3 years ago. I hadn't replaced it. And then I owned a duplex, which I just closed on that on Friday and sold. It was time to get some of my equity back out of the property, and trying to figure out what we're going to do with it. Either roll it into another property to not pay taxes on it this year, or I don't know what we're going to do yet. We might just use the money to get out of debt or something like that. So, and then
That's awesome.
the lawnmower shop, I purchased the business and the building and the land, and that was in 2013. So we're looking to cash out of my equity in that as well. Because
it's been that long already, right?
Right?
I can't believe it's been that long. 8 years, man. Amazing. Time flies.
Crazy.
So, let me ask you this, Ryan. I'm curious. What gave you, what was the decision to go ahead and buy the building that the studio is in? Like, was it just right time, right place, right offer? You've been waiting for this, because obviously you were renting before that.
Right. There's some pros and cons to both of them. One of the pros is I've been investing in real estate since around 2010. So I understand the financial impact it's going to make. Renting's good because you don't have to worry about major maintenance. But when you sign a triple net lease, you're paying for all the maintenance on the building as well, whether it's the air conditioner or the plumbing or just painting the building and stuff like that. Pretty much. Sorry about that. Yeah,
right.
I'm on my phone right here.
That's okay.
So landlords pretty much giving you all that responsibility, so you're in on it. Plus, they're going to amortize the insurance, and they're going to amortize the taxes throughout the tenants in that building. So you're sharing a part of all that anyway. So I figured, why not just take the whole responsibility, start building equity into the place. So I figure in another 7 years, I'll have the building paid off. So that money I'm paying in
We lost him.
Yeah, or he froze up. That's the problem with the phone sometimes. Gotcha. But it might just reconnect, or he'll come back on the link. But yeah, I'll just keep the dead space alive right now. But knowing Ryan and his wife Andrea, they've always been very entrepreneurial, and so he's got a lot of the real estate. And by the way, Dwayne, a cool game that you may want to buy. I don't know if you want to play it with the family, and you could even get it as an online game and play with others around the world. It's called Cash Flow Quadrants.
Oh yeah, you said that before.
It's by Rob Kiyosaki. And it just talks about, and I was teaching my daughter, how to rent, and the profit and the equity and the insurance and the cost and the profit versus the income and so on. So it's an interesting game. So anybody who's listening out there and you want to learn more about real estate, definitely get that game or join it. Ryan.
Oh, you must be
You're
talking
back.
about Robert Kiyosaki's game, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. Remember, I came to your dojo and I taught, and I think it was us, you and I, and one of your students, Darren, maybe Daryl.
Yeah.
And we went to his house and played the game.
Yeah, we did.
You know, yeah, that was pretty cool. So Ryan, you were saying though, like everything is, you have to look in and take into account, what you're going to spend as a tenant versus what you'd be spending as an owner. And pros and cons to both, right?
Right. And another thing you got to consider is your comfort level as a business owner. Maybe you're not going to be comfortable with actually taking on the several $100,000 worth of debt. It's just a comfort level. I've gotten comfortable with holding that amount of debt. I had the debt on my rental properties, my personal home, the martial arts school. It's just what investment you're going to make. Plus you're going to need some cash down. I don't know about where you're at, but anytime I bought a piece of rental property that's not my personal home, I've had to put down 20 to 30% in cash, liquid assets. And that's something you're going to have to think about too. So if you're purchasing a property and it's costing $500,000, you're going to need $100,000 in cash to bring to the bank and say, hey, I've got this, because they're going to want that equity in it. So if you default, they're going to be able to sell that property. So to kind of get back to what Mr. Dwayne was saying is, the property came available. I'd been looking for probably 10 years, and it was just the perfect storm. It was a friend of mine, and his mom owned the building. And I heard he was going out of business. So I just sat down with him, and that's how we moved into the place that we're at right now. So, you just got to keep your eyes open and continue going and gut check. What are you comfortable with doing? Renting's not a bad idea, because at the end of the day, you don't have the responsibility. But depending on which your landlord, around here, they're pretty strict as far as locking into that triple net cam, which means you take part in the taxes and the insurance and everything else.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting too, Ryan. I think that what you mentioned, that it's about your gut, right? What you can take. So I love, and again, I brought up, Donald Trump a second ago, but when people say the man's in so much debt, well, that, he uses banks and their money to finance his future. So having debt, like whether you own 10 buildings and you owe $200,000 on each, you might be $2 million to $4 million in debt, but you're not paying that every month. And as your tenants pay their bills, you're paying down your debt and building your equity, and it's all happening on the bank's dollar. Yes, they're making a ton of money on interest, and if you could do it in cash and buy buildings out on your own, that'd be great. But if you're using the bank's money, that's a smart move. Or it depends on your philosophy. I remember, again, going back when I was young, I wanted to have everything debt free. Then I switched into the philosophy of I want to use all the bank's leverage and use all their money. Now I'm back to being 56 years old. I'd like to be debt free again, and paying real estate off and selling some off to pay up others, and so on. So that's a very important point, that whole entire gut check.
And if you look at interest rates over time, we're at one of the lowest points in history to borrow money from. So, now's actually a great time if you can get the bank to loan you money. Coming out of COVID, banks are a little leery on loaning money to businesses just because of the situation that we encountered last year. Up to I listened to you guys on your podcast, and we're mask free down here in Louisiana. We're not at 100% capacity, but we've been running our school for probably 9 months at 50% capacity.
Right.
And we were only shut down for probably 4 months, where we started having people come back into the school. So we're a little more open, I guess, here in Louisiana.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
So that's but it did take a toll on us as well. And that's one thing you got to look at is, you got to pay that bank back. You're on the hook for that mortgage. They're not going to let you sign corporately for that mortgage. They're going to make you sign personally for it. And one thing that's good about a rental property is if you need to get the cash out, you can always refinance and pull the cash out. The 2 rental properties that I've owned, I've refinanced twice already and pulled my capital investment out already and used the money to, do whatever I wanted with it. So that's one thing I do like about real estate. And that's one thing I do see about this building is, once I get it paid off, I'll have an asset that I can go to the bank and say, either give me a standing line of credit for whatever, $100,000, and I can take and revamp and redo my whole school, or I can just have the equity in it if I needed to.
He froze up again. He's got some great information though, right? Like it's really, he's been doing this for a long time. I don't know why I didn't think of him first. To get him on here, but yeah, so not only does he have like three commercial properties, but he's got a lot of residential properties. So what he did point out though, which you and I have had this discussion before, is that it really all depends on where you're at. And right now you are looking to invest so that you not only have your building controlled by yourself, but you also have other rental income to pay the taxes on the building, to offset the cost of the mortgage and so on. And that's beautiful. So, but there are certain people that always they think the big deal is to buy a building, and that's a good thing to do if you're ready to do that. But there also is some positives to not having a building, like Ryan said. Ryan, we're talking about you, with some of the positives of not owning as well, because being a tenant.
You just walk away. You don't have to worry about anything,
Right.
If times get tough or, God forbid you lose a significant other or you get injured and you have to retire. I mean, it's a lot easier or if you have a day job and your job moves you to another city, so, those are things that you need to consider as well, and you're not going to have the liability of a mortgage, but I don't know about the leases you've signed, but they pretty much make you put a personal guarantee on there.
Yeah, you see, I've never ever, if a landlord ever requested that I sign personally, I just wouldn't rent from them. So I've never signed personally on one of my rented buildings. But then again, you have to be willing to walk away. Like if it's the perfect facility, some people I want to be there. And I remember one of my favorite real estate mogul guys that I would read was Dolph DeRoos, his name is, right? And I haven't read his books in years, but he had 2 sayings that I loved. One was that the deal of a lifetime comes around once a day. So sometimes in your head, you're like, oh, if I don't take this deal, I'm never going to find it again. And that's not true, because right around the corner is going to be some other deal that is probably just as good, if not better, if you look enough. And the second thing too was that, you can't be married to any one particular piece of property that you have, meaning oh my God, this is the one. And I'll spend over, I'm always shocked when I watch real estate shows and they're like, okay, the house is on the market for 400,000, but you should offer 490. I'm like, why would you not offer what they're asking and then negotiate from there? I've made that mistake many times where I believed the realtor and they told me a number. And then I felt my first ever deal I bought, I was probably 17, 18 years old. I bought my own home. And the realtor said, I made an offer, crazy offer. I think they wanted 170 for the house. I said, I'll give them 70. And they said, oh, no. They've turned down offers way higher than that. So then I went up to the asking price and I ended up buying the house. And on the closing table, the guy turns to me and said, thank God you bought this building. I was going to lose it within 2 weeks because it had a deal with my ex-wife. I would have taken anything for it. And I turned to the realtor, and it was a woman. I said, if you weren't a lady right now, I'd punch you in the mouth, because she literally ripped me. She forced me by lying to me to buy the higher price, which I understand. She makes a commission, but I could have, if I stuck to my guns, got it for half the price. So don't trust realtors. That's the lesson of that one right there.
You've got to do your homework too, municipalities do a great job of figuring out where the flow is, how many cars a day pass in front of these buildings. And that's what owners do too, because they're selling you this spot. So they want to, build it up to like, hey, we get 1 million cars that pass here every day. So, you got to look at those things too. Well, another thing is, when you're investing in that property, you got to look at what's your return on investment. I mean, I don't know what you're getting in the bank right now, but my money's not getting much. So if I get it into my property, that's what I'm doing. Is I'm making an investment, just like everybody's putting money in a 401k. They're putting money there and hoping to get a return on their investment. Well, I know how much my martial arts school is making a month. I know it can support the debt that this building is going to bring. And actually, my mortgage is less than what my rent was. And my rent, I locked in like 18 years ago, after I moved out of my first place, and the guy never went up on my rent. So it was a mutual beneficial, because I paid him every month on time, and he, as a landlord, that's unheard of, is to have a tenant that long that's never late. So I look at all of those factors, but at the end of the day, you're making a huge financial decision, and you have to be comfortable with being able to do that.
So yes or no, what is your overall opinion, right? What's your rent or buy for you? Your thoughts?
Oh, for me, it's definitely buy, because I don't like people telling me what to do. And when you're renting, you got to share spaces with the rest of the tenants. So I had, sometimes we'd have 40 or 50 people coming in there, and the parking lot would be overflowed. And I was renting from a hardware store guy, and he'd come in and say, man, you got to tell these people not to be parking in front of my door. And I'm like, man, I'm paying you all this money every month. I can't tell them what to do. I'll ask them, but, I just didn't, and I figured I was maintaining his building, other than the outside and the roof. I had to replace a condenser coil on an AC unit and get a plumber in there. So I'm a buy person, simply because I'm comfortable with carrying that debt. And every property I've ever bought, you tell somebody you're buying something, they say, oh my God, I hope you don't get screwed, and there's just a lot of people aren't comfortable with doing it. But I was never comfortable with going to work and pushing the button, pulling the lever, and turning the wheel. That's just not my personality. I've got to.
And by the way, Dwayne, I started with Ryan when he was working full time, and you were a scientist, right? I forget, something to do with.
And I managed a lab, and I was a management employee at a chemical company over here. So.
Yeah, so he was a scientist, right? Yeah, that was pretty awesome. And you jumped out at that career and went. I remember guiding through. We were doing that, and you were like, "I'm going to go full time," and it was scary. Like, we had to set numbers and say when you were ready and when you felt it was good to let go of the other job. And you've done amazing. And we lost.
All right,
him
just
again.
message him, let him know thanks. We're going to bring
I will
Solomon
right
on
now.
right now. We got Solomon Brenner on.
All right, awesome. Another expert.
Hello, sir.
Hey, guys. How are you guys today?
Good. Isn't technology amazing, right? You're in your car driving, and we can have you on the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm driving to golf, so I figured this is the perfect timing for me. Yesterday I golfed starting at 12, and then you guys invited me on, so I was like, all right, I can golf at 12:30 if I'm driving on the way. So that's perfect. Great. Yes.
All right. So just know what the topic is, right? You know what the topic is: rent, don't rent, buy, don't buy. What are your feelings? And first off, before you say that, what with your schools, what's the percentage that you own and you rent?
We have 22 schools. I think we own 13 or 14 of the properties. So I certainly prefer to buy, but I think there's always a time that rent could make more sense. I wanted to address two things. One is the horror story alley that he had, and I've had horror stories too. But I also think when you're doing it long term, smart brokers are and I think the same thing, that like, the higher that I pay, the more, the more they make, right? So it's hard to believe they're on your side. But I also know that the smart brokers long term, if they are on your side, make way more money long term with you than anything else. So I think it's having that, I have 2 brokers that I use exclusively, and I 100% believe they're on my side, and they're never posturing me to pay more. They might posture the other person, but I get a percentage back sometimes, of their commission if I do some of the work. So anyway, I think having that right relationship is huge. So anyway, and I mostly like to buy, but I do think there's a case study for, or a scenario that it does make sense to rent.
So what would that case study or scenario mean?
For me, renting, the benefit of renting sometimes would be, number one, you love the neighborhood and there's nothing for sale. But you think the neighborhood is going to support a karate school in a really good way, then you rent, right? Like, it is what it is. You're paying some money, and the last gentleman that was on talked about ROI, right? Return on investment. And if you believe that area is going to crush it, then renting is fine. Another reason might be you can't afford the down payment, and you can't find anything where you can negotiate away the down payment, which is another option I get. We've done it that way too, but there's always or it's in an area that you don't want to own. We've had areas that we think would be a good karate school, but I'm not sure about how well real estate's going to do in that area, and I'm a little bit nervous about it. Willing to rent then, or rent in the beginning for a few years until you establish the school and then buy. We're at the point now where we just pretty much look for real estate, then fill it with a karate school. But certainly in the beginning, when you're not at that point, there's nothing wrong with renting if you're just starting a business or wherever you are.
That I love what you said too, though. The first thing is most important about having a relationship with your realtor. That's somebody that if you're buying multiple properties consistently, they better work with you and care about you, or else there's no sense working with them, right? So you've gotten that relationship, and that's great. So and I agree with you on all the rental stuff that you said. There's a lot of different reasons to rent or to purchase. So I know Dwayne's in the middle of possibly doing a buy on a deal on a building and setting up his second school. Did you have any specific questions, Dwayne, for you, like your thoughts?
Well, no, I guess so let's say this, when looking for a martial arts building, should I be looking for a standalone building, so it's just my studio, or one that I could have renters out of?
Yes. Either.
Okay.
We have both. I prefer standalone because I'm not super into being a landlord. But the ones that I'm in are totally fine. But when they're, it also depends on how much you can carry. If the other tenants, if you have an empty building for whatever period of time. When we had an empty building, one of our buildings is 15,000 square feet in an amazing location, and we're only using 2,900 square feet of the 15,000. So for some period of time when we had 12,000 square feet empty, it was hard for me to sleep at night. I would just think all night, who can I talk to? What can I do? And I did a ton of research to find who I believe is the number one person on the planet in rentals, not in my neighborhood. I mean, on the planet, at least in the US, I guess. And I asked her to consult me. And the things that she did were way different than a local broker would do, as far as prospecting. And she was pretty much the equivalent of us at karate. We're not the average martial arts school, right? So she was amazing. Had all these marketing, all these marketing tactics and ways to talk to people and ways to structure the deal, and just, she coached me over the phone, and we found up finding the tenant. I spent every single day for a month just driving around the neighborhood, stopping into other businesses, saying hey, have you ever thought about expanding or growing or moving? I own some property down the street, and thought she wanted to stop in and say hi. And it took every day doing it. I printed my own marketing flyers. Besides, I had a broker, but the broker just puts it on the listing sites, and that's the end of it. So if you can live with, when the people are paying the rent, I'm a genius. I'm really smart. I'm a pretty good businessman. when they're not paying the rent,
Right.
I'm pretty much having a heart attack.
Yeah.
So I think, for me, and a single-use building, I'm pretty confident in that. The rest of it, we have apartments, we have other retail, but I prefer, if I could do anything, I'll do a single-use tiny building.
So when you say tiny, what's the square footage?
The smallest we have is like 1,650. The biggest we have is probably 5,500.
Okay.
And they're single-use buildings. But if I had anything,
Yeah,
2,500, 3,000 square feet would be whatever, fine with me.
Okay.
I love what he said too. Like I've had, and by the way, I've had some horror stories with certain towns as well in my area. I bought a beautiful building on the water. I had my own dock space for a boat. Like I don't have a boat, but if I wanted to drive to work on my boat, I had huge parking, 4 units in the building plus my school. And I didn't know this until after I owned the building, that nothing but stress from the town. Like I had people that they would come in and fine my tenants. Like, for example, I had a guy who owned a limo business, and he would bring his limo to work because he was take a call and go out and use his limo. They'd come and plop a ticket on his car because he was parking in my own parking lot. So they made it so difficult for me to have tenants. The tenants would always move out. So eventually I hated the town, not the actual town, but the municipalities. And I sold the building. I was like, I'm done with this. They made it so difficult for me to be a landlord and have rentals that I had to get the hell out of there. And I sold it and made some money, but not nearly as much as I could have if I held on to it. But they were just the worst. And that town still to this day is riddled with empty buildings. So be careful with that and always look where, what's going on around that property.
I'm not sure how you de-risk that. I guess you can ask all the other, the other property owners in the town, like, stop in for pizza or whatever and be like, hey, so how's the township treat you? I mean, our way of doing things with the townships is we couldn't possibly be any nicer. Like I've been there when other people are screaming at the zoning officer and screaming at the whoever is in charge. And I'm like, oh my God, we go in like, silver tongue. I bring gifts, like non-bribing gifts, like, an Action Karate mug and a t-shirt or something. And I always bring, I bring it for the zoning officer and the secretary and the lady at the front desk. Like I usually bring like a whole bunch of stuff and then just kind of give it out as I'm walking through. Because I always think they're always going to like me more. When we had to do a ton of construction, like, over $1 million of construction on one of the buildings. And the zoning officer used our building as an example for the state of how, like, they're so good at regulation because, we did a nice job. And then he called me one day and he's like, listen, I have my kids do a fundraiser every year. We raise a ton of money. I was curious if you want to donate. We're in the middle of the project. Of course I'm willing to donate. Whatever. How much is a good donation? Yeah. I would love to. And then he was telling me, and this is where it could get scary, that there was another person, not with us, but like in another building, where he said he felt like and he was a super nice guy. Like he felt he bent over backwards for her. Like he was telling me that most of the rules that come from our state that he has to follow are pretty much impossible to deal with an existing building. Like it's too hard, but he has leniency that he can kind of let it go if it's like impossible to fix and to bring it up to code. And this one woman, he said, like, he bent over backwards. He said, like, constantly, like, finding ways to help her. And then at the very end for the final inspection, like, he couldn't make it the day she wanted. And she, like, screamed and, like, ripped him up and was, like, cursing at him. He said, oh, guess what I'm doing today? I'm showing up at her building with the code book. Impossible to pass. She'll never pass. He's like, I don't know why she's yelling at me for. I did everything for her and she would have passed, but now she's not. And I was like, oh, my God. Yeah. So I think, if you're dealing with zoning people, I don't know how you're mean to them. I think you have to like become their friend. Right. And beg for, like leniency.
Yeah. And you're right, though. That's 100% true. And I tried that with my one and they were just like impossible. They would, no matter what I did. But anyway, so what do you think? We're running close on time. Like pros and cons, you said rental. Like, Dwayne, do you have any other thoughts on that? Like what other questions to pick his brain?
Well, yeah, I was going to say too, or ask, what about like parking? Is that something you definitely look for when you're looking for a building too? I mean, like how big of a parking lot or the flow, or what are you looking at?
Yes to all of it. We have one township that changed their parking ordinances because of us. I like to have a little more than 20 spots at a time. You know, it depends on the model of your school, right? Like how many people, you know, like our schools, we try and have like 18 people in a class is the max. You know, when we have 30, it's too many. But I also look at auxiliary parking. So is there parking on the street? Is it next to a shopping center? How friendly, you know, is it a giant center where nobody's going to notice we're parking anywhere? Or is it like a little center that somebody, you know, the owner's walking around picking up trash and he's going to notice it and not like, you know, in that case, I would go talk to him and say like, hey, if this happens, you know, what's the situation? You know, if he's like, oh, you can rent it, or if he's like, I don't worry about it, we're neighbors. You know, or if the street has parking. We actually, like our very first building we ever bought has like 27, 28 spots, something like that. But the flow of the parking lot is terrible. Like you'd only get like one car in, one car out at the same time. And it's very difficult. We wound up like adding adding like another drive-through section that they didn't really want us to do. But we kind of like, it just, first it was a tree, then the tree went away, and then it was mud, then the mud became rocks. And then I bought a house 2 doors over that I still live in that is zoned commercial, but it's huge. And it has, not the house isn't huge, but the parking lot's huge. And we let like all the instructors park there. So that alleviates that. In the beginning, we made all the instructors park like way down the block. So none of them were in the park. You know, in the beginning, the instructors take all the best spots because they get there first. I'm like, no. You guys all park. And then leadership team, they have to park somewhere else. Like we don't allow anybody to park. Right. If you're there for more than one class, or I know you well enough to say like, hey, Mr. Brummett, could you do me a favor, sir? Would you mind parking up there to not, you know, let some of these other families in? And, you know, if you're like a good student, you're like, oh, sure, no problem, sir. Parking is definitely an issue, but I don't let it stop me if there's some reasonable place for people to park. And
it also depends. No, I was going to say, it also depends on the culture, right, of the community. Like, for instance, if you lived in Manhattan, people are used to parking way over and walking, or they might walk. Like in my one location, you've been there. I remember one time I wasn't there and you showed up, you did like a secret shopper, and you called me on the phone. You're like, and you stopped in at my school many years ago in my West Islip location. But I only had like 17 spots in that location. So, and now I combined it all into my new location. I have like 35 spots. And the people just love, like, there's no stress pulling in and out. You know, it's not, that was a big deal. I've lost more students because they hated my parking than I gained because of it. So, I mean, it's something that's very important to look at, but it also depends on the culture. If they're used to parking far away and they can walk, like, look at Mr. Hafner, one of your people that you, right, Dwayne, that you work, he has a school, from what I know, in the city, down in the basement with just parking on the street.
We have schools with zero parking. We have schools that have like, there's zero parking. And, you know, maybe there's meters on some side street. And like you said, the culture is, you know, every store has that. And if you moved into that neighborhood, you knew what parking was. It's also super densely populated where tons of people walk. We got really lucky on one building. One of our buildings has zero parking, but directly diagonal is a municipal lot that's free. We don't have to maintain it. We don't have to do anything to it, which, you know, parking lots are expensive to deal with.
Right.
And so that was super lucky. But I think there's a use case for pretty much anything, you know, if you can kind of figure it out. We actually started something, I know, with our group, that we partnership with people now to buy buildings. So, you know, if they want to buy a building, but they really don't have they don't have one of two things we can fill in. Number one, if they don't have the experience, they want the benefit of our experience, and we'll partner with them. Like, we go in and we put money in and they put money in, or they don't have all the money for it. Well, pretty much what we do is we buy it, we lease it to them. They have to put a substantial like deposit, which is what they would do anyway. It's not like that much more than they would do as like their 2 or 3 months deposit. And we do a 15-year lease. The building has to be paid off in 15. At the end of the 15, they would, depending on the size of their deposit, they'll get like pretty much that percentage back in the building. So they're pretty much buying a building with us. However, the downside is if they leave before the 15 years, it doesn't matter to me what reason is, they lose everything. When I say they lose everything, they lose their deposit. That's all they really lose.
Right.
Right.
So, well, hey, we appreciate you hopping on, and we don't want you to miss tea time. Is there any final things you want to say?
I think in general, buying is always better. I mean, you know, if you believe in your school and you're paying rent, in my mind, the biggest reason we do it is we're paying rent anyway. you might as well just pay it to yourself. Of course, there's downsides. Like somebody was, the guy that was on here earlier, it's not exactly the same. At least you can write off 100% with your mortgage. You can only write off the mortgage interest. In the beginning, it's almost all of it, but it's not, doesn't always stay that way. And he said something else. Oh, he said like it's locked in. You have interest rate risk. I mean, for us, we're only able to lock in our interest rate traditionally for 5 years. I know sometimes you can get 7 or 10, but it's usually 5. And if your and interest rates are historically low now, there's no place for them to go but up. So if it goes from 4%, like right now, you say you get 4%, but then it goes to 8 in 5 years. Hopefully you pay down the building enough that it kind of balances itself as far as payments go. But there's a possibility if inflation goes to crazy, which I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just saying there is a risk. It's not just like, oh, I pay my rent or I pay my mortgage. It's not exactly the same thing. So there is, risk that people should consider.
Yeah.
Love it. Well,
Absolutely.
I appreciate you getting on, sir. Have a good, are you doing 9 or 18?
Depends on my partner. Yesterday we did 18, but we almost always do 9.
Okay. All right. Well, have a great time, sir.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Talk to you soon. Bye. So Dwayne too, I think that it all depends on the person as well. Like, for example, find someone that could mentor you or someone that you could call up when you have questions, because there's so many ways to float deals in real estate that are traditional ways and non-traditional ways. And I just helped one of my clients where he's like, oh man, the banks are taking forever to approve a mortgage, and I'm going to lose this deal. These people want out by X date. And he says, I'm going to give up the deal. And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, I can't come up with this and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, yeah, here's some choice. And I started throwing choices out to him. I said, maybe ask them if they'll hold the mortgage. People sometimes own buildings free and clear. And they're like, rather than making 2%, if that, like 0.5% on their money, in the bank, they could charge you 3.5% interest and make way more than they'd ever make if their money was sitting in the bank, and they would be the landlord, or not the landlord, the bank, the mortgage company. I mean, another way to do it too is to always talk to people and maybe do a 5-year amortization. Like after 5 years, you say, listen, I'll give you 20,000 down and another 25,000 in 5 years and another 25,000 in 10 years, then I'll pay the building off. And that might, people would be like, I'll do that deal. And so like, don't always just go with the traditional, always ask. And I think we talked about this. I said, always ask the realtor to see if they'll hold the mortgage, because then you don't have to wait. You don't have to pay. And I don't know which, Illinois is like, but I know New York, they charge you fees just for buying a house, ridiculous, $2,000, $3,000, just, taxes and then this payment and this fee and that fee. I'm like, wow, did I just pay $7,000 for nothing? Like, on a closing, so you could avoid a lot of that if the person holds the mortgage. You don't have to deal with banks and closing points and statements and so on. So, I'm still caught in between. Like I would say, if you're in it for the long haul, own. If you're not sure where you're going to end up, maybe moving out of state, maybe sell. One of my other clients is building up real estate, and he's bringing in like $6,000 in residual income every single month just from his rental properties. So, and that's residential. So this could turn into something crazy good for you as well. So it's exciting right now.
It is. And I, as weird as it sounds, I've been comfortable, and I need something, I think, to kind of help me take out of my comfort zone, Right.
Yeah. And expanding with a second school too. So you're doing second school, own the building, and then you'll be your own landlord, but also an investor. So like in that 4 cash flow quadrants, you're jumping from owner to business owner to investor in the same 2 quadrants. So that's a pretty exciting thing for you.
It is. It's nerve-wracking, but it's exciting. And that's why, I thought, hey, why don't we just do the call on this, see if we can get a few people on. Some of the things, especially like what Solomon was talking about, square footage, I thought that, I really need a bigger location in order to have renters, but he's saying he'd rather have a single location, no renters. And that's a different concept,
Well, it's also about, how far you want to extend yourself, right? So like he said, I had that building where I had tenants, but if the tenants weren't paying rent, I was paying the rent. So I didn't want to make sure that my school was the only person that was paying the bill. So, but I have my 2 buildings were standalones, but I would rent office space within it at times, rent off a little section and make a little bit of extra money. But I've always been my own owner-occupied landlord, so to speak, right? So your school, what is your square footage on your school now?
It's like 4,700.
And do you find there's any section of that's wasted space?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you look at, maybe you could deal with a 3,000, 3,200 if you really, organize it the way you wanted to, or 3,000 even. So, I've ran a school back in the day. It was probably 12 to 1,300 square foot, and I had 250 students out of that location. And then I bought my own building. But I do believe if I knew what I do now, then I would be able to run more out of that place.
And see, the place that I'm looking at right now is 4,400 square foot.
That's a big building.
It is, but it's less than what I'm operating in right now.
Yeah, and you could probably even go less if you had to, if you were going to look. But that's something. It depends on your overhead, right? That's the most important thing.
Yep. So
well, cool.
Right. Well, yeah, I think this was a great time, great information. I'm so appreciative to Ryan and also Solomon for getting on, and I appreciate you putting that together, sir.
That's cool, man. And I wish we could have had Master Park on too, but maybe another time, and he could talk about it as well, because he has a gorgeous facility. So that he owns 10,000 square foot, so that's pretty awesome. But maybe we'll do that. But anyway, next week we have a guest. And then the week after, we'll do our call that we had just talked about, which is going to be going through all our stuff. And we talked about the call topic is student value and terminology on the 30th. So, Dwayne, have a great day. You're going to play our outro. And for everybody here, I hope you had a good call. And if you're listening to this at a later time, please make sure that you comment or you like and you share it with other people. And you can check it out on iTunes, right? Spotify and other places like that as well.
Absolutely. And I want to say this, if you're listening to this via podcast and you're not a part of our private member group, go to schoolownertalk.com. In the menu section, you'll be able to click on the Facebook private group and then become a member. Answer the questions. We're not going to let you in if you're not answering the questions. So answer the questions. Yeah. We want real people. Look, we want real martial arts school owners. We don't want marketers. Yes. We don't want, people that are trying to market to martial arts school owners. We want real martial arts school owners, because this is school owner talk, and we want it to be about you and what you need for your school, if that makes sense. So check that out.
And I think we're at almost or more than 700 plus members, right? We're at, what are we in our group? Yes, almost 800 members now of solid, straight martial arts school owners. That's pretty damn exciting.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Allie, thanks, sir.
Awesome, Jane. You have a great day. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
All right, bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk Podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out EliteInsights.com for all your website needs. LeadHunterMedia.com, your online digital marketer and content provider. Academy Kings BJJ Growth Consulting and Management at GrowMyAcademy.com. SparkMembership.com, the best darn software for school owner manager on the planet. GetKarateStudents.com, a martial arts growth consulting company for all your school systems. We will see you next time.